I always believed in forever. Love wasn't just a fleeting emotion to me. It was something I built my life around, a foundation strong enough to withstand anything. For 8 years, I lived in that certainty. My name is Madeline. I'm 36. And I used to think my life was safe, predictable, and unshakable. I work as a freelance writer, spending my days crafting stories, weaving emotions into words. Julian, my husband, was the practical one. As a corporate executive, he handled the structured side of our life, balancing logic and stability while I drifted between creativity and dreams. Together, we had a rhythm, a routine that felt comfortable, effortless. Our home was filled with warmth, quiet laughter, and the kind of familiarity that made me believe love, real love, never fades. But then something changed. Julian started coming home later and later. His once affectionate greetings became distracted nods. His kisses turned into absent-minded gestures. At first, I told myself he was just busy, stressed with work. I ignored the subtle shift in his presence, the way he seemed to disappear even when he was right in front of me. Then, one night, I decided to remind him. I made his favorite dinner, set the table, lit the candles. I waited, heart hopeful, but the minutes stretched into hours. When he finally walked through the door, he didn't apologize. He didn't explain. He didn't even look at me. He just sat down. The air felt thick, suffocating. And then, he spoke. "I don't love you anymore." The words hit like a blow I never saw coming. My breath faltered, my hands turned ice cold. But before I could process them, he delivered the final cut. I met someone else. The world around me blurred. 8 years, our home, our memories, our promises, collapsed in an instant. I wanted to ask why, to make sense of how love could just disappear, but I couldn't move, couldn't speak. I don't remember what happened immediately after. Everything blurred together, as if my mind refused to process the reality in front of me. I sat on the couch, motionless, as Julian moved around the apartment, packing his bags with a quiet efficiency that made it clear this wasn't a decision made on impulse. He had already planned his exit long before he ever told me the truth. I heard the sound of drawers opening and closing, the shuffle of clothes being folded, the zipper of his suitcase sliding shut. His toothbrush disappeared from the bathroom. His cologne, the one I used to love, was gone from the dresser. The closet, once filled with his suits and neatly arranged ties, now had empty spaces where he had taken everything that belonged to him. And then he was at the door. He said something. I barely heard it. Maybe it was, "I'm sorry," or "I didn't mean to hurt you." But what did it matter? Words wouldn't undo what had already been done. And then he was gone. The door closed behind him and silence filled the apartment. A silence so loud, so suffocating, that for the first time in my life I felt truly alone. The next morning, I woke up, and for a fleeting moment, I forgot. My body moved on instinct, reaching for the warmth beside me, but my hand touched only cold sheets. And just like that, it all came rushing back. I sat up, staring at the empty space where he should have been, where he had always been. It felt unreal, as if I had woken up in someone else's life, as if the version of myself that had gone to bed last night had been replaced by someone new, someone hollow, someone who didn't recognize the world she was now living. The apartment felt haunted. His coffee mug was still in the sink, untouched. His chair at the dining table was still pulled back slightly, like he had just left and would be back any moment. His scent still lingered on the pillows, on the jacket he had forgotten in the hallway, on the clothes in the laundry basket that I couldn't bring myself to wash. I stopped eating. Food lost its taste. I stopped sleeping. The bed was too big, the quiet too unbearable. I moved through the days in a daze, forcing smiles at work, pretending to listen to conversations that barely registered. People told me I would be okay. That time would heal me. But I didn't believe them. Then came the moment that shattered me completely. I was walking through the city, my thoughts far away, when I passed a cafe, and there he was, Julian, sitting at a table, laughing, with her. She was young, beautiful. She leaned in when she spoke to him, her eyes wide, her smile full of admiration. He looked at her the way he used to look at me. He looked happy, so effortlessly, breathtakingly happy. I felt my stomach drop, my legs go weak. I wanted to turn and run. I wanted to scream. I wanted to demand how he had moved on so easily while I was still drowning in the wreckage he left behind. But I just stood there, frozen. And then he looked up. For the briefest moment, our eyes met, and in that second I saw something flicker in his expression, surprise, guilt, maybe even pity. I didn't wait to find out. I turned and walked away. This time, I didn't cry. Days turned into weeks, each one stretching endlessly, blending into the next. I forced myself to eat, not because I was hungry, but because my body demanded it. I made myself go outside, let the cold air touch my skin, let the noise of the city remind me that life was still happening around me. I forced myself to function, to respond to emails, to smile at coworkers who gave me sympathetic glances but never asked questions. But nothing felt real. It was as if I was trapped in a glass box, watching the world move on without me. People laughed, held hands, made plans for the future, things I used to do without thinking. But now, every step forward felt heavy, as if I were dragging the weight of something invisible yet unbearable. Then, just as I was beginning to think I could survive this, another betrayal arrived. One afternoon, a thick envelope was slid under my apartment door. I picked it up, fingers already trembling before I even opened it. My breath caught as I scanned the words, my mind struggling to comprehend what I was reading. Julian wanted the apartment. He left me. He walked away without a second thought. He tore apart my world, erased our future, discarded me like I was nothing. And now, he wanted to take away the last thing I had left? Something inside me cracked. For so long I had drowned in sadness, letting it consume me, letting it define me. I had replayed our memories over and over, trying to understand what went wrong. I had spent weeks grieving the life I thought I would have. But now something else surged through me, something hot, something powerful, something that had been buried beneath all the heartbreak. Anger. I sat on the floor, gripping an old wedding photo, my fingers pressing into the frame. 8 years of love, sacrifice, devotion? For what? For him to move on so effortlessly, while I was left to pick up the broken pieces alone? I reached for my phone, my hands hovering over his number. I wanted to call him, to scream at him, to demand to know how he could be so cruel, how he could try to erase me completely as if I had never existed in his life. But then something shifted. My fingers hesitated, and instead of pressing call, I pressed delete. And in that moment, I realized something. I was weak before, but I won't be weak anymore. I wasn't going to let him take everything from me. For too long, I had let grief consume me, had let the pain dictate my every breath, my every thought. But something had changed. The moment I deleted his number, I severed more than just a contact. I severed the hold he had over me. I wasn't that woman sitting on the couch, watching helplessly as her husband packed his bags. I wasn't going to let him strip away what was left of my life, my dignity, my sense of self. The next morning, I took my first step toward reclaiming what was mine. I found a lawyer. I sat in a quiet office, the scent of polished wood and freshly brewed coffee filling the space. As I laid out my case, I gathered everything: bank records, mortgage statements, emails, anything that proved my right to my home. I had been there just as much as he had. I had built a life in that apartment, contributed to it in ways that couldn't be measured in dollars. He thought he could take it from me as easily as he had walked away, but I wasn't going to make it that simple for him. For the first time since he left, I felt something other than sorrow, determination. It wasn't an immediate transformation. Healing never is. But it began in small ways. I ate full meals, not out of obligation, but because I wanted to nourish myself. I started writing again, allowing words to flow from me like they once had, not as a distraction, but as a reclamation of my passion. I stopped checking my phone, stopped expecting the apology that would never come. I stopped waiting for him. And then life did something unexpected. It brought me face to face with him again. It happened on an ordinary afternoon. I was walking through the city, the air crisp with the promise of a changing season, when I saw him, Julian, alone. For a brief moment, our eyes met. His confident posture faltered, just slightly, just enough for me to notice. There was something in his gaze, maybe surprise, maybe discomfort, maybe even regret. But for the first time, I didn't feel pain. I didn't feel anger. I felt free. I walked past him without a second glance, without the weight of the past clinging to my steps. He thought he could take everything from me, but I am still standing. One morning I woke up, and something felt different. It wasn't a sudden revelation or a grand realization. It was subtle, quiet, just a shift in the air, a softness in my own thoughts. I no longer reached for his side of the bed. The space beside me was still empty, but it didn't ache the way it once did. It was just a space now, not a reminder of what I had lost. I no longer cried at night. The tears had come for weeks, unrelenting, crashing over me like waves I couldn't escape. But now, the storm had settled. The scars were still there, etched into me in ways only I could see, but they no longer defined me. They no longer dictated my every breath, my every thought. I made coffee, the rich aroma filling my apartment. The place that once felt haunted by his absence was now something else entirely. It was mine, truly mine. I sat by the window watching the city come alive beneath the morning light. Cars moved, people hurried down sidewalks, laughter spilled from somewhere in the distance. Life was happening, moving forward, and for the first time in a long time, I wanted to move with it. I didn't know what the future held, but I was no longer afraid. For the first time in years, I was excited to find out. Heartbreak is an inevitable part of life, something many of us will face at some point. Like Madeline, people often find themselves lost after betrayal or unexpected loss, struggling to understand how someone they trusted could walk away so easily. The pain feels unbearable, and moving forward seems impossible. But her story reminds us of an important truth. We are stronger than we think. In life, we cannot control how others treat us, but we can control how we respond. Healing takes time, but it starts with a choice, the choice to reclaim your life, no matter how broken you feel. If you are facing heartbreak, here are some lessons to take from Madeline's journey. Accept the pain, but don't let it define you. Grieving is necessary, but don't let sadness consume your future. Cut ties with the past. Let go of people who no longer serve you, and stop waiting for closure from someone who has already left. Rebuild your identity, rediscover your passions, create new goals, and remind yourself that you are whole on your own. Believe in new beginnings. The pain will fade, and one day, like Madeline, you will wake up ready to live again. Every ending is a new beginning. Join our community of strong subscribe for more stories that heal and inspire. See you in the next story, Star.